My husband sold my $2 million ranch to his new girlfriend for $5. He thought I'd cry and walk away quietly. Tad, I smiled. He had no idea what I'd already done, long before he made his move. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the sound of a woman who's already won. Lisa Hawthorne cornered me in the feed store parking lot, waving papers like victory flags. Just wanted to thank you for the ranch, she said loud enough for other customers to hear. $5 was more than generous. She held up the deed transfer, my forged signature bold across the bottom. Samuel sat in her Mercedes, avoiding my eyes through the tinted glass. I loaded 50-pound grain bags into my truck bed, each lift steady and controlled, while she kept talking about her plans for my land. The feed store owner, Tom, watched from his doorway, confusion clear on his weathered face. Going to convert those old stables into a yoga studio, Lisa continued, her voice carrying across the gravel lot. Samuel says you won't mind clearing out by Monday. Before we continue, if you believe that hardworking women deserve to protect what they've built with their own hands, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach others who need these stories. Monday. 3 days to leave the ranch I'd built from nothing. I hefted another grain bag, the familiar weight grounding me while my mind raced. The signature on her papers looked like someone had traced my name with their non-dominant hand during an earthquake. 20 years of signing breeding certificates, veterinary forms, and supply orders. You'd think Samuel would know how I actually write my name. Tom Murphy stepped out from his doorway, approaching slowly. He'd sold me my first bag of feed when I was 25, fresh from my father's funeral, using his life insurance money to buy 2,300 acres of scrubland everyone said was worthless. Everything all right, Lily? His eyes moved between Lisa's triumphant face and my steady loading. Just fine, Tom. I positioned another bag, the rough fabric familiar, under my work gloves. Lisa here was explaining how she bought my ranch. Bought. Tom's weathered face creased deeper. But you just ordered winter supplies for $5, Lisa interrupted, shoving the papers toward him. Legal and binding. Samuel handled everything. That's when I noticed Samuel's hand on the door handle, like he might get out, then thinking better of it. 18 years of marriage and he couldn't even face me while stealing everything I'd built. The cowardice hurt more than the betrayal somehow. Lisa's phone rang. She answered with a giggle that belonged on a teenager, not a 40-year-old woman. Yes, baby, I'm telling her now. She held the phone toward me. Samuel wants to talk to you. I took my time walking to my truck's tailgate, closing it with careful precision. Tell him he knows where to find me. The last grain bag loaded, I climbed into my truck without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw Tom examining the papers Lisa had pushed at him, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. He'd been in business long enough to recognize garbage when he saw it. The drive back to the ranch took 12 minutes. I'd made this trip so many times I could navigate it unconscious. Past the Henderson place where their new foal was learning to run. Around the bend where lightning had split that massive oak 5 summers ago. Up the hill that overlooked the valley I'd spent 2 decades transforming from neglected land into something beautiful. Elena's truck was parked by the barn when I arrived. My ranch manager for 12 years, she had instincts sharper than any horse. She emerged from the barn holding a clipboard, but her eyes were on my face. Lily. Just my name, but the way she said it carried questions. Lisa Hawthorne claimed she bought the ranch. For $5. Elena's expression didn't change, but her knuckles went white on the clipboard. That explains Samuel loading his things into a rental truck this morning. Thought you knew. This morning. While I was training the yearlings in the back pasture, he'd been packing. Planning his escape while I worked the horses, unaware my world was being dismantled box by box. Show me, I said. We walked to the house. My house, built with my hands and my father's insurance money. The office door stood open. His desk drawers were empty, the file cabinet ransacked. But Samuel was an idiot if he thought the important papers were in obvious places. Elena followed me to the kitchen where I reached behind the refrigerator for the old coffee tin wrapped in plastic. Inside were the real documents, the original deed in my name alone, the receipts from every improvement, the breeding records that proved the bloodlines I'd developed. And something else, a hotel receipt from 3 weeks ago I'd found in Samuel's jacket. Riverside Hotel, champagne room service for 2 with a handwritten note. Can't wait for our new beginning, Elle. You knew? Elena asked, looking at the receipt. I suspected. Found this when he claimed to be at the Dallas cattle auction. I folded it carefully, returned it to the tin. But suspicion and proof are different things. My phone buzzed. Margaret, Samuel's sister, calling for the third time this week. I'd been ignoring her, but now I answered. Lily, thank God. Her voice was strained. I've been trying to warn you. Samuel's been asking me about property law, about how to transfer deeds. He thinks because you let him handle the taxes he has some claim. I told him that's not how it works, but... He already tried, Margaret. Filed something at the courthouse. A long pause. Lily, you need a lawyer. Now. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd served Samuel breakfast this morning, unaware he was planning to steal everything by lunch. Elena sat across from me, quiet but present. Marcus Fitzgerald, I said finally. He handled my father's estate, helped me buy this place. His number's in the tin too. While Elena called Marcus, I walked through my house, seeing it with new eyes. The walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the windows I'd replaced one at a time as money allowed. In the living room hung our wedding photo, both of us young, hopeful, standing in front of the old barn before I'd rebuilt it. Samuel's smile looked genuine then. When had it become performance? Marcus could see me tomorrow afternoon. Until then, I had horses to feed, stalls to clean, and a ranch to run. Whatever Samuel and Lisa thought they'd accomplished with their $5 fiction, the real work didn't stop. It never had, not through drought or flood or market crashes. It wouldn't stop now. That evening, I stood in Midnight Star's stall, checking on our pregnant mare. She'd been restless for 3 days, showing signs of a difficult pregnancy ahead. I ran my hands along her sides, feeling the full shift within. Life went on, preparing to enter the world regardless of human drama. We're going to be fine, I told her, though I wasn't sure which of us I was trying to convince. I've built this place once from nothing. If I have to, I'll fight to keep it. The mare nuzzled my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. Outside, the sun set over pastures I'd seeded, fences I'd mended, and dreams some fool thought he could steal for $5. Tuesday arrived wrapped in ordinary sounds. The coffee maker gurgling its final drops, bacon popping in the cast iron skillet my mother had seasoned for 40 years. I was slicing tomatoes from the garden when I heard Samuel's dress shoes on the hardwood instead of his usual work boots. He stood in the doorway wearing his charcoal suit, the one reserved for funerals and bank meetings. We need to talk. He didn't move toward the coffee pot like every other morning for 18 years. No kiss on my cheek, no complaint about the heat, no question about which horses needed attention. I kept slicing, the knife moving through red flesh with practiced precision. Your breakfast is almost ready. I won't be staying for breakfast. He pulled out his usual chair but remained standing behind it, gripping the back like a podium. I'm leaving you, Lily. For Lisa Hawthorne. The name wasn't a surprise. I'd seen it on that hotel receipt, heard it whispered in his sleep. But the next words were, the ranch is already sold. $5. Filed yesterday at the courthouse. He slid papers across the table, avoiding the wet ring from my coffee mug. The documents looked official enough. County seal, notary stamp, all the decorations of legitimacy. But the signature meant to be mine looked like someone trying to forge a check while riding a mechanical bull. You can't sell what isn't yours, Samuel. It's done. Community property laws. My name's on the tax documents. I turned off the stove, moved the bacon to a plate lined with paper towels. Ordinary movements while my mind catalogued 20 years of paperwork he'd never bothered to read. The deed in my name alone. The inheritance laws that protected what I'd bought with my father's money. The hours of labor I'd documented building this place before we'd even met. When did you plan this? My voice stayed level, professional almost. Does it matter? Lisa's coming by to look at her property. You should pack. That's when we heard the Mercedes pulling up the gravel drive, its engine too quiet for ranch country where trucks announce themselves with honest noise. Through the window, I watched Lisa Hawthorne step out like she was arriving at a photo shoot. Cream-colored pants that would last 30 seconds in a barn. Heels sinking into gravel I'd spread myself last spring. A silk scarf that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. She walked through my front door without knocking. Oh good, you're both here. She surveyed my kitchen like an appraiser, her nose wrinkling slightly at the bacon smell. I want to see everything. Starting with the master bedroom. I stayed at the counter watching this woman navigate my home in shoes meant for marble floors. The bedroom's upstairs. Mind the third step, it creaks. We'll be fixing that, she announced, already climbing. This whole place needs updating. Samuel, come show me our closet. Our closet. He followed her up the stairs while I stood in my kitchen, listening to her heels overhead, marking territory in rooms where I'd nursed him through pneumonia, held him after his father died, celebrated the good years before they turned. Elena appeared at the back door, taking in the scene with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. Saw the Mercedes. Everything okay? Samuel sold the ranch to his girlfriend. For $5. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. Marcus, no. Meeting him tomorrow. I'm texting him now. Emergency basis. She kept typing while Lisa's voice drifted down the stairs, planning to tear out the bathroom I'd retiled by hand, install something more contemporary. They descended 15 minutes later, Lisa chattering about paint colors while Samuel carried her purse. We'll need you out by week's end, she told me, like discussing a dinner reservation. Samuel says you have somewhere to go? Samuel says a lot of things. Elena stepped forward, all 5'4" of her radiating the quiet threat of someone who'd faced down charging bulls. The horses need tending. You planning to learn? Lisa laughed, a tinkling sound that belonged in a cocktail lounge. Oh, we're selling those beasts. Converting the stables to an event space. Much more profitable. Those beasts. Bloodlines I'd spent 2 decades developing. Horses whose genealogies I could recite like family trees because they were family. We're going to town, Samuel announced, his hand on Lisa's back. To introduce her to everyone. They left in her Mercedes, leaving dust on everything I'd cleaned yesterday. Elena and I stood in the sudden silence, processing the surreal morning. Those papers won't hold, she said. I know. But the damage he's doing in town will be his to live with. By 11 my phone started ringing. First Martha Henderson, whose property bordered mine. Honey, is it true? Tom Murphy just called saying Samuel's at the store with some woman claiming she owns your place. Then Ben Williams from the bank. Lily, there's some confusion here about a property transfer. Can you come in? Finally, old veterinarian Doc Hendricks. Just had the strangest encounter with Samuel and a blonde woman. They're telling everyone you're having some kind of breakdown. What's really going on? Each call was a small humiliation, my private catastrophe becoming public entertainment. But the worst was yet to come. My phone screen lit up with Katie's face. My daughter away at college, the one pure thing Samuel and I had created together. Her voice was thick with tears before I even said hello. Mom, what are you doing? No greeting, just accusation. Katie. Dad called. He says you're trying to destroy his happiness, that you won't accept the divorce, that you're making up lies about the ranch. Each word was a separate wound. Samuel had reached her first, painted his picture on a blank canvas. He says you're having some kind of breakdown, that he's worried about you but you won't get help. Katie, none of that is true. Then why is he saying it? Why would he lie? Because that's what he does now, I wanted to say. But poisoning her against her father, even a father doing wrong, wasn't my way. Come home this weekend. I'll show you everything. I have a study group. Please. The word cracked, showing more vulnerability than I'd intended. Just come home. Let me explain in person. Her paws stretched across miles of wire and doubt. Hey. But Mom, if you're really having problems, you need to admit it. Get help. After she hung up, I sat at the table where I'd served thousands of meals, helped with homework, celebrated birthdays. The bacon had gone cold, grease congealing white on the plate. Through the window, I could see the horses in the pasture, unaware their fate was being discussed in town by people who thought them beasts. Elena placed a cup of fresh coffee in front of me. She'll understand when she sees the truth. Will she? Her father's version is simpler. Mother gone crazy is easier to believe than father committing fraud. Kids figure out their parents eventually. Truth has a way of surfacing. I hoped she was right. But for now, I had a ranch to run, horses to tend, and a life to protect from people who thought they could buy it for pocket change. The morning had shattered plenty, but I was still standing in the pieces, figuring out how to reassemble them into something stronger. The credit card statement arrived buried in Thursday's mail, tucked between feed store flyers and auction notices. I almost tossed it unopened. Samuel handled our personal finances while I managed the ranch accounts. But his name on that storage facility charge stopped me cold. Ace Storage billing monthly for 6 months. Unit 47B. I drove there that afternoon telling Elena I needed supplies from town. The facility sat on the outskirts, rows of orange doors baking in the sun. The manager, a kid barely out of high school, recognized me from the ranch's community writing program. Mrs. Brennan. Here to check your husband's unit. Lost my key, I lied smoothly. He cut the lock without question, probably violating 10 policies. The door rolled up to reveal Samuel's secret archive. Banker's boxes labeled in his blocky handwriting. I pulled out the first one with steady hands. Inside were breeding records, our breeding records, but the sales figures were wrong. Thunder's Pride's offspring, which sold for $50,000, showed as $15,000. Documentation for bloodlines I'd developed over decades, all with altered numbers. A second set of books for ranch accounts showing massive losses where I knew we'd profited. Then I found the letters. Lisa's handwriting was flowery, almost teenage. 2 years of correspondence I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice. Can't wait until we can stop pretending, one read. That derby party plan is perfect. Get her drunk, get her signature, we're free. The derby party. 2 years ago, Samuel had been so attentive, refilling my wine glass, insisting I relax for once. I'd woken with the worst hangover of my life and no memory of signing anything. Now I understood why he'd been so pleased with himself that night. I photographed every document, every letter, every falsified record. My phone storage filled as evidence mounted, years of deception documented in Samuel's own writing. The last box contained receipts for jewelry I'd never received, vacation charges from trips he'd taken without me, restaurant bills from dates while I was working late. Back at the ranch, Elena waited in the barn office, her expression carved from stone. We need to talk, she said, closing the door behind me. I should have told you sooner. She pulled out a folder she'd hidden in the supply cabinet. 3 months ago, Samuel met with Jack Morrison about buying Thunder's Pride. Said you'd agreed to sell but were too emotional to handle negotiations. Thunder's Pride, our foundation stallion, whose bloodline I'd spent 15 years perfecting. I told Morrison you'd never sell. He backed off, but then Samuel started approaching collectors for breeding documentation. Claimed horses had died or been traded. She spread papers across the desk. Copies of emails, falsified death certificates, forged sales agreements. I've been documenting everything, making copies before he could destroy originals. Why didn't you tell me? I kept hoping I was wrong. That there was an explanation. Her voice cracked slightly. You seemed happy. I didn't want to be the one who... You protected the ranch. That's what matters. Together we traced the money trail. Phantom veterinary bills for procedures never performed, medications never purchased. Dr. Hendrick's signature forged dozens of times. The total approached $400,000 over 3 years. There's more, Elena said quietly. Last month while you were at the breeders' conference, Lisa was here. In your house. I have security footage from the barn cameras. That night, unable to sleep, I remembered something. The cloud storage account I'd set up years ago for ranch documents, back when Samuel claimed he wanted to help more with the business. He'd forgotten I had administrator access. I opened my laptop at 2 a.m., logging into the account with credentials he'd never bothered to change. Their text messages synced automatically from his phone. 2 years of conversations sprawled before me. She actually thinks I'm working late, Samuel had written. So pathetic. The stupid cow probably doesn't even know what the ranch is really worth, Lisa replied. Every plan detailed. Every lie celebrated. Mockery of my morning routines, my dedication to the horses, my trust in the man I'd married. Photos of them together at restaurants I thought he'd visited with clients. Pictures from a Cabo vacation during what he'd called a business conference. Then I found it. A photo that knocked the breath from my lungs. Them together in my bed in my grandmother's quilt, while I was at the Kentucky Horse Show last spring. Lisa's caption, her bed is more comfortable than mine. I ran to the bathroom, emptying my stomach until nothing remained but bile and rage. Not just betrayal, desecration of every sacred space I'd built. Marcus Fitzgerald answered his phone at 6 a.m., alert despite the hour. Lily, I've been reviewing the documents Elena sent. There's something you need to know. We met at his office within the hour. He'd pulled county records dating back to my purchase of the ranch. The deed is entirely in your name. Your father's life insurance paid for it before you married Samuel. But his name is on tax documents only. For filing purposes. He has zero legal claim to the property itself. Marcus pulled out another folder. Remember the Derby party 2 years ago? That party again. Vaguely. I drank too much. Samuel had you sign something that night. He probably thought it was power of attorney or property transfer. Marcus smiled grimly. But you signed a postnuptial agreement I'd prepared months earlier and left in your desk. It states that in case of divorce the ranch remains solely yours. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. It's legal, filed, and ironclad. Samuel signed it too, probably thinking it was something else after his own drinks. He pulled out the document, both signatures clear despite slightly wavering lines. He accidentally protected you from himself. What about the money he stole? We'll file liens against the property for unpaid labor, 20 years of ranch development at market rates. Between that and the embezzlement we're looking at $1.8 million in claims. Even if his fake sale was legal, which it isn't, the liens would prevent any transfer. I sat in Marcus's leather chair, surrounded by evidence of betrayal so complete it should have destroyed me. Instead I felt something else. Clarity. Every suspicious moment, every instinct I'd suppressed, every excuse I'd made for Samuel's behavior had been warning signs I'd chosen to ignore. File everything, I told Marcus. Every lien, every charge, every piece of paper that protects what I built. This could get ugly. Criminal charges. It's already ugly. Now we make it legal. Elena was feeding the horses when I returned. She looked up from Thunder's Pride's stall. This stallion Samuel had tried to sell behind my back. How bad? She asked. 2 years of planning. $400,000 stolen. Photos in my bed. She absorbed this, then returned to brushing Thunder's Pride with steady strokes. But the ranch was never his to sell. The stallion nickered softly and I realized something. While Samuel and Lisa had schemed and stolen, I'd been building something real. Every foal born, every acre improved, every young rider taught. That was my true fortune. And no $5 deed, no matter how many times they filed it, could steal what was already mine. The next morning I woke at 4:30 as always, made coffee in the same pot I'd used for 20 years, and started my rounds like nothing had changed. The horses needed feeding whether my world was falling apart or not. Samuel found me in the barn, mucking stalls with the rhythm of someone who'd done it 10,000 times before. You're taking this well, he said, suspicion creeping into his voice. I kept shoveling. Taking what well? The sale. The divorce. Everything. Life goes on, Samuel. Horses still need care. He watched me work, probably expecting tears or anger or begging. Instead, I whistled softly, the tune I always used to calm nervous yearlings. By the third stall he left, unnerved by my normalcy. That afternoon Marcus's investigator, a quiet man named David Park, arrived disguised as a potential student for riding lessons. While I showed him around the arena, he planted recording devices smaller than buttons in the kitchen, living room, and office. Legal in our state for a property owner, protecting against fraud. Act completely normal, he instructed. Let them hang themselves with their own words. So I did. I packed Samuel's lunch each morning, turkey sandwiches with the crusts cut off, just how he liked them. Washed his clothes, folded them precisely. Even ironed his shirts, though he'd been wearing them to see Lisa. The familiar domestic routines became a performance, and I played my part perfectly. Thursday evening, Samuel brought Lisa to dinner. In my house. At my table. Hope you don't mind, he said, though clearly he didn't care. Lisa wanted to see the kitchen in evening light. I served pot roast, the recipe his mother had taught me. Set the table with everyday plates, not the good china. That would seem bitter. Poured water for everyone, kept my movements steady and calm. Lisa talked through the entire meal about her renovation plans while sitting in the chair where Katie had done homework for 12 years. We're thinking marble countertops, she announced, gesturing at my worn butcher block that had seen 2 decades of family meals. And definitely removing that wall for an open concept. Interesting choice, I replied, passing the potatoes. Samuel watched me carefully, looking for cracks. Finding none, he grew bolder. You should be grateful Lily didn't fight the sale, he told Lisa, right there at my table. She knows she couldn't have managed this place alone anyway. Every word recorded by David's devices. Every admission of their scheme preserved digitally. Friday afternoon, Katie's car pulled into the drive. I watched from the window as she sat in her vehicle for a full minute, gathering courage to face her unstable mother. When she finally emerged, her face carried the exhaustion of someone forced to choose sides. Mom. Just one word, but loaded with doubt. Your room's ready. Fresh sheets. She followed me inside, stiff and formal like a stranger. In the kitchen, she set down her bag carefully, studying me for signs of the breakdown her father had described. Dad says you're not accepting reality. Sit down, Katie. I spread the evidence across the table methodically. The forged signatures. The bank statements showing theft. The storage unit photos. Her father's text messages mocking my stupidity. Lisa's cruel comments about my work with the horses. Katie's hands shook as she read. When she reached the photo of them in my bed, she shoved the papers away and ran to the bathroom. I heard her getting sick, the same reaction I'd had. Later we sat on the porch swing, the one I'd hung when she was 3. The chains creaked with familiar rhythm as she leaned against my shoulder. How are you so calm? She whispered. You remember when you were 8 and that mare kicked you? She nodded. You got back up, walked to the barn and got back on. No crying, no drama. You said fear would make the horses nervous. This is different. No, sweetheart. Patience is what separates trained horses from wild ones. Your father's acting wild right now. I'm staying trained. She was quiet for a long moment. I'm sorry I doubted you. He's your father. You wanted to believe him. By Saturday, the town had chosen sides. At the feed store, half the customers offered sympathy for my situation, while the other half avoided eye contact. Martha Henderson whispered loudly to her sister about how some women drive their men away with neglect. Lisa had started an Instagram account, Ranch Life Dreams. Photos of her posing with my horses, calling them her babies. One caption read, "So blessed to start this new chapter. Country life suits me." The comments section filled with congratulations from people who didn't know she'd stolen it for $5. The Wilkins family, who'd bought horses from me for 15 years, canceled their monthly training session. Just until things settle, they said, but I knew what they meant. Drama was bad for business. Only Elena, Doc Hendricks, and surprisingly Tom Murphy from the feed store